Welcome back. Thank you for staying with News Center. We continue with the broadcast. And on this segment, we want to talk about Kenya's sector, that's the private sector, but focusing on side hustles mostly. And as you well know, Kenya's small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as the broader private sector, faced one of the most turbulent years due to the disruptions brought about by COVID-19 and the negative effects coming thereafter. But it's a journey of resilience, and as they say, perhaps profits is a destination as well as a journey. So we'll definitely take a look at some of the sectors that were affected, be it the tourism sector, when we talk about music and entertainment sectors as well, that got the greatest brunt. And out of this, perhaps due to the dwindling money in terms of formal employment, some of those people decided to take a look at the side hustles. And we want to take a look at a report that was launched by FIFA. We have the managing director right here in studio, Victor Otieno, joining us to perhaps shed light on some of the nitty-gritty issues we need to highlight, perhaps the trends as well as the performances and the challenges as well when it comes to side hustles. Thanks for joining us. Do you have a side hustle, by the way?
This is my main hustle.
I get you. So perhaps, you know, some people have their main hustles as their side hustles, but for those who, due to the negative effects of COVID-19, in one way or the other, there was loss of entry-level jobs. When we talk about instability in the formal employment in some sectors of the economy, be it tourism sector and whatnot, did people actually turn to side hustles to supplement the income they had lost in one way or the other? And what are the numbers?
So the background around this study, of course, our studies focuses on small, medium enterprises across the different spectrums that they are, be it family business, side hustle, etc. So this particular study, of course, these are fourth edition. Just looking at this unique trend that is in Kenya around side hustle, and more so coming from the negative effects of COVID, which hit in 2020. So there was some shift that we wanted to find out what is actually happening within that particular space. So of course the effect of COVID on corporate Kenya was for them to restructure, cut their budgets, and one of the key budget lines that was affected, of course, was payroll. Either full, you're on leave, and it's either unpaid or half pay. So of course these people, because they had to sustain their livelihoods, had to find ways of supplementing their incomes. So, and of course we saw a report from the registrar saying that there's over 50% jump in terms of business registration. So that tells you that there is a shift of sorts, and we just wanted to unpack that, and see actually what actually is happening within that particular space.
So let's start unpacking then. What was the main motivation? Was it the money factor into those who are in formal employment still looking to side hustles?
So engaging in side hustle, of course, there is a spectrum of factors. Of course, the number one being supplementing income, given that my income has reduced. So that became a main factor. Number two was trying to look for a better return on investment. So, for instance, if you're working and you earn a salary and you want to save 1,000 shillings, would you want to save that in the stock exchange? Would you want to buy a government bond? And if you were to compare that in terms of return vis-a-vis a business where you can get a return of 60–70%, then a side hustle makes sense for you to be able to invest the little income that you are getting. Of course, there are issues around retirement. I would want to have something that when I retire, I can be able to do to keep myself busy, but also to give me some income of sorts. So those are the three major motivations that we saw.
And just to interject, did you take a look perhaps at the sustainability of these side hustles? Because we well know that common narrative that majority of these SMEs barely make it to the third year,
So a lot of side hustles, if you look at the sectors where they are, we are seeing a lot in wholesale retail. So this is quick cash. I go buy stuff from China, come sell at a margin, so I get my immediate return on investment. It's not like I want to build an entire empire of sorts.
I get you.
So that's what, and you can see it's supplementing the income. You need quick cash. So of course there are issues around education. Can I do extra classes? Maybe for me to be able to just get that quick cash.
All right.
Ideally, we should be able to help these kinds of businesses to be able to establish themselves and become their main hustle of sorts if possible.
Well, we definitely hope for that. You mentioned there was a jump in the number of businesses that were registered at the registrar, and perhaps that's a good move. But what was the most preferred side business sector? What were people looking to in terms of supplementing their budget?
So it depends. So usually a lot of people who are inside the households don't want to disturb the balance that they have with their main household.
Yeah.
So they try to do a business that would not affect their 8 to 5. So buying to sell, so this is wholesale retail, is very good. Media and entertainment is also very good because it doesn't affect your main household, your main business.
Yeah.
We also saw construction, which also you can still manage as you do your business. But what is also very interesting is if you are to compare this year with last year, is we are seeing the age bracket of between 26 to 30 a jump in terms of them engaging in side hustle, which is telling in the sense that these are almost entry-level jobs that either companies in mainstream private sector are shedding that level compared to last year, where we were seeing a lot of them being within 30 to 41 years. So it was almost 2020 was almost mid-level managers being affected. Then as we go towards 2021, we are seeing more of the entry-level jobs, either their salaries being affected, then of course they're engaging in side hustles.
Okay, it's a tricky balance, especially if you don't want to affect your 8 to 5 and you still want to get return on investment, as you mentioned. And perhaps that's where the advent of social media and online shops comes to this individual's advantage. What's the impact of online shops to the success and perhaps the increase of side hustles, as you've noted in the report?
Yeah, so one of the questions that we asked was if your side hustle is trading online in one way or another. And by e-commerce, we are very generous in terms of what we define. It doesn't mean that you have to have a formal site. It could be even trading on WhatsApp, being on Kilimani Moms and all these groups and trying to sell through there. And the reason why 70% were saying that they're online is because, again, they don't want to affect their 8 to 5. You are looking for the easiest way for you to be able to earn an income, do business that would allow you to hold your 8 to 5 job, but as well as be able to engage in business and be able to get some quick income. So it's not like I'm looking at to make an income in December or make a sale in December. I need cash flow. I need to be able to make sales, quick sales within a month, which I can be able to pay either my rent, school fees, etc.
Okay, that's really proper. Well, cheers to this e-commerce shops. But speaking of the progress we've made in terms of these businesses being registered and whatnot, are there challenges, and what are the challenges? Because business, there are usually a couple of bottlenecks, whether it's access to capital or access to market, even lack of a shop and opportunities as well. What are the challenges that are facing some of these side hustle enthusiasts?
Yeah, so side hustle, whether it's side hustle now, when we talk about challenges, it doesn't matter. We are looking at business, and we know that the typical challenges that businesses face in Kenya, of course, the number one is always access to finance. And of course, this is linked to the kind of business model that you have. So if you're in the business of buying tomatoes to sell at a margin, it means that your business has to have working capital. You have to be raising capital or finance every so often, because your profit margins are thin. You can't reinvest that back to the business. So it means automatically getting finance is a problem. Looking at markets, again, because we can't differentiate. If you're selling tomatoes, I'm selling, and we are going to the same market, our profit margins are thin, so it means that access to market becomes a challenge. Of course, we have other issues around business skills, policy and the legal regime not being as conducive, and a barrage of challenges. But of course, from a government perspective, we've seen quite a bit of efforts to read or to ease the business environment in Kenya.
Okay, that's really proper. And as we finalize, I don't know if you've gone through the standard, and it being a political year, transition year, there's a headline right here: when politicians sneeze ahead of polls, economy catches a bad cold. So I don't know if you've taken a look at the impact of politics, especially towards the side hustles within the economy, or what exactly are they projecting in this particular year? Disruptions? Are the investors a little bit hesitant, trying to take a look at how it all pans out?
Yeah, so I think politics aside, if you have to look at the structure of government, the National Treasury released the budget policy statement, which is a document that stipulates how government is going to raise revenue and how it's going to invest in the economy. And if you're to focus on SMEs, the question is, are the strategies that have been put there optimal? So, because that would run, irrespective of having an election or not, government would still have to run. And the question that we should be asking ourselves, even as we wait for the budget to be read, is have we put enough money to help catalyze the SME sector? Is the stimulus program working? We've had the first, second, and now in the budget policy statement, they're proposing a third cycle. Are they working? Do we have a report showing how past stimulus programs has been able to help SMEs? And if you are doing a third one, what do we expect? So I think those are the critical questions that we should be asking. Of course, politics has a way of affecting the business climate from an investor perspective, but I think so far our politicians have behaved relatively well. And that I think as we look at this first quarter, things are calm. So I think investors should be able to put in their money in Kenya, and Kenya is safe.
Okay, back to the report. I think you were taking a look at the third quarter last year, and that's really proper. But how was it in terms of revenue performance? Were these side hustles getting that quick return on investment that they so do need? How did they perform?
Yeah, so if you look at the sector, the way the sector preference, we have wholesale retail. So that means it's a business that requires face time. So if we ask the question of revenue performance 2020, 2021, 2021, 2022. In our previous report, the revenue performance was dipped because of restrictions of movement, etc. So as we came to 2021, of course, with the reopening of the economy, it meant that, of course, now people could move, then people could, it meant that people could, buy goods and services. So we saw a jump in terms of revenue performance, which, of course, has had a good effect in terms of supplementing income, etc.
Well, that's really proper. As we finalize, any key issues that were highlighted on the report that perhaps we haven't been able to canvass?
So of course, what we saw, of course, number one is a lot of side hustle is still male-dominated, with men being a super majority. Of course, that might change as we move forward. In terms, of course, as I mentioned, in terms of revenue performance, we saw 40% of the respondents that we interviewed were saying that the revenue performance was more than 10%. Lastly is in terms of future plans, we saw that a lot of people were saying, I think around 48% were saying that they plan to quit their full-time job and go to ensure that their side hustle becomes their main hustle.
That's eventually long-term or short-term?
Yes, it's because we are seeing it's not like their main hustle, the salary is going to go back to pre-COVID levels. For some companies, they took the opportunity to ensure that the salary cut remains. So the question is, if you're to look at building this business for it to be able to be sustainable, vis-a-vis you staying full-time 8 to 5 and salary is not moving. So I think 48% is a big number, is a significant number. So we wait and see to see what happens in the future.
Okay, that's really proper. And perhaps this being your field, you might be privy to information going forward, because we're at a various important time in the country's budget, because we just had the budget policy statements being read out. We expect a lot more information coming through Parliament, even through the Ministry of Treasury. But taking a look at some of the policy guidelines of the current administration as it comes to an end, what would you say about the small and medium-sized enterprises? Have they been enabled in one way or the other, despite the numerous challenges that are there, even pre-COVID? How exactly are the policies and the implementation under this particular government? So, of course, this government was implementing policies that were within the Vision 2030. So, under the MTP3, that's where the Big Four agenda fell. So I think, generally, I think it's a mixed basket, because we've seen business reform happen in the last decade or so. Like literally, you can go online and register your business. This is unheard of. Within maybe 10 days, there's a small claims court that has been established. So if you have a dispute and it's less than 1 million, you can literally go and get help. But I think there has been a weakness in terms of enforcing. One is
looking at the strategies that have been put towards the MSME sector. Number one, veracity of or effectiveness of these policies, number one. Number two is actual implementation of the said policy. Number three is actual resourcing of these strategies. And I can give you an example. We say we want to support SMEs in terms of training. We allocate 1 billion as an example, but we go ahead and pass a supplementary budget to reallocate that 1 billion from SME to another sector. So what that does mean, it means that your strategy will not work. So that has been a major problem, as well as a framework of evaluating effectiveness of our strategies. So if we did a stimulus program 1 in 2020, how effective has that been? So we don't see that report. We come to 2021, we see another round of stimulus program. We are doing a stimulus program number 3. What has happened, in the first and second, and what is so different about the third that would either supplement the first or second, or an improvement to that. So that evaluation mechanism has been a major weakness that we've observed.
Well, we definitely hope for better times ahead. Thank you so much for saving time. Victor Otieno right here joining us, the Managing Director of Vifa Consult Limited. In regards to a report on where they centered on side hustles and perhaps some of the challenges, the trends and the performance in this particular financial year comparing with the previous financial years as well. So side hustle seems to be the way to go. I'll encourage you to perhaps think of one as well.
I'll do.
Okay, thanks for your time as well. We'll definitely highlight other developments, and in the same spirit, want to cross over to yet another event happening in Gigiri, Nairobi. Earlier on, I had mentioned we expect